Hi everyone, it's Danny from Orchid Nature. Today we're going to discuss about a really nice feature that some orchids have, and this is their fragrance. If you didn't know, some orchids possess the most amazing fragrance in the world, well, at least to my nose. So we're going to discuss about some of the orchids that do possess fragrance and why they have the fragrance, when do they smell, and so on. Just a discussion about orchid fragrance. So first, let's discuss about why some orchids have fragrance. Well, their main goal in life is to get reproduced, to get pollinated, reproduce, and make sure their species will continue to live throughout the millions of years. This is how it's always been. And the fact that we enjoy their fragrance as well is a bonus, but they really did not create this fragrance for us. Their goal is to attract little insects, butterflies, moths, anything that can pollinate them, as moths are enticed both by their appearance and color, but also by fragrance. An insect can detect a fragrance from miles and miles away and actually search for this specific flower because of its fragrance. This is why some orchids really do possess a very, very strong fragrance, and it's actually related to the type of moth that pollinates them, but we're going to see a little later. Talking about specific types of moths and insects that can pollinate orchids, if you have a few orchids, fragrant orchids in your collection, you might have noticed that most of them do not release fragrance during nighttime. And this is because their pollinators are not active during nighttime, and their main goal is to attract them. So some orchids can release fragrance only during the morning time. Some of them release fragrance all day long, or maybe in the noon. And some actually release fragrance only during the nighttime. It only has to do with the specific pollinator that this orchid wants to attract. Now, this feature has actually evolved through millions and millions of years. Imagine this plant had to figure out that a specific pollinator is what she actually needs, and that specific pollinator likes a certain type of smell, and that pollinator only is active in a part of the day or of the night. So think about it. Orchids are so smart to actually manage to adapt themselves, and this is why they're one of the oldest group of flowering plants there are on Earth, and they actually didn't change that much ever since they reached this stage. So this is one example of an orchid that only releases fragrance during nighttime, and if we think about its environment, it's really so logical to figure out why she smells the way she smells, why it's so powerful, why she has this color, and so on. So imagine the moth this orchid is looking for is a night moth. As you may guess, it's pretty colorblind. This is why this orchid is very light in color. As you can see, it's whitish, yellowish. Anyway, it really stands out in the dark. This orchid really doesn't need any other colors to entice its pollinator. It only has to stand out. But the most amazing feature of this orchid is the most amazing and powerful smell you've ever seen. Now, this orchid managed to release such a wonderful and strong fragrance during nighttime that I was actually able to feel it from my other balcony, which is about, I'm not exaggerating, 10 meters away, and the actual two balconies are not connected. So the smell of this orchid traveled with the wind through the window and actually reached the other window of my balcony. This is why I'm saying that fragrances actually help orchids entice butterflies and moths from very, very far away. So this is a very, very good adaptation skill for this orchid. Release a powerful fragrance to attract moths, have a standout color, not very blurry and colorful, just a very pop-out white color, and also think that there are just a few moths that are actually active during nighttime. So she's only looking for a specific type of moth that can pollinate it during nighttime, because if any type of moth could pollinate this orchid, she might get the pollen from a different species of orchid, and the seeds would not develop. So I think this orchid is the perfect example of how well they can adapt to their environment, yeah, basically how smart these orchids are. Now, except the orchid species that are fragrant, we can also encounter fragrant hybrids. And they are actually wonderful because two or more fragrant orchids were combined together to get a brand new shape and a brand new color, but also a brand new fragrance. This is how the cherry baby Oncidium, which smells like chocolate, get to exist. There were two orchids that had specific fragrances, and when you combined them, you get a very chocolatey fragrance, and this is wonderful as well. So I'm always on the lookout for fragrant hybrids as well, because they might have a very, very unique fragrance you might not encounter in orchid species. And getting back to our orchid collection, an orchid will only release fragrance if it's in a good mood, let's say, if it's cared for properly, if it's hydrated, and so on. So for you to obtain the best fragrance from your orchid, you need to make sure that you give it adequate care. Also, you have to make sure the orchid is healthy and the root system is healthy, and also keep it hydrated. I've noticed that orchids that are not hydrated, that are pretty suffering from lack of water, they will not have a strong fragrance like the orchids that are actually healthy and receive quite a lot of water. So watering actually plays an important role in releasing fragrance. Also, there are times when you see an orchid, you smell it at the store, it smells wonderful, and then you bring it home and for a few days it will not smell. That's pretty normal because the orchid is adapting to your environment and it's not really focused on releasing fragrance to entice pollinators, but it's more focused on adjusting to the environment. After a few days, your orchid might start to smell again, so don't worry about it. Of course, there are those instances where the flower is pretty spent and you don't know it's spent, and it will actually smell for just a bit and then it will drop. So don't worry in this case either. Just care for the orchid normally, and the next time it will bloom, you'll have a wonderful fragrance once again. Now, a special place in the fragrant orchid world is occupied by Bulbophyllum types orchids. Now, some of these orchids are really gorgeous, but their fragrance, or better yet smell, is really foul, and I don't want to put you in a bad mood, but it's the type of smell that attracts flies. I guess you can figure it out. Now, again, these orchids are not created to please us, and that's Jackie. They're only created to attract that specific pollinator, to make sure that this orchid will move on and will live through the millions of years. And yeah, the orchid is really, really pretty, but if you have a very small room, maybe you should not get a very ugly smelling Bulbophyllum orchid. These orchids are actually kept in open spaces and are actually really beautiful, too bad they really smell foul. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will actually make more videos on fragrant orchids because some of you have asked me to compile a video in which I present more fragrant orchids just for you to know what to buy if you're looking for fragrant orchids and how they smell like and so on. So I will definitely do maybe a playlist of fragrant orchids and so on, just to make it easier for you to find them. Alrighty, if you have questions or suggestions for me, just leave me a comment and I'll try to make a video for you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos in the future. And visit orchidnature.com if you want to get in touch with our community and possibly get some new tips regarding orchids. I'll see you next time. Bye!